cold winter afternoon. Very good afternoon and a happy Makar Sankranti to everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Same to you.
Thank you. Today I am presenting in front of everyone a very important topic, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. It's supposed to be known to each and everyone, not only healthcare providers. In fact, it should be known to everyone. Seeing to the importance of this topic, today I have divided my presentation into three parts. First, we will go ahead with the literature part through the slides. Second is going to be a video presentation. And third, we are going to do a live demo as well as practice on the dummy. Coming to what exactly is resuscitation. Resuscitation means all the measures that are applied to patients who have stopped breathing suddenly and unexpectedly due to either respiratory or cardiac failure. Basically, it is all means to revive two major aspects, that is circulation and respiration. The emergency cardiac care deals with three most important systems of our human body, that is the cardiovascular system, cerebrovascular system and the pulmonary systems. So in this situation, the code blue is instructed in the hospital setups, that is activated. Coming to this code, emergency code system, this was started by the Hospital Administration of South California, known by HASC. They have denoted certain codes for certain emergencies for the ease of calling out for help as well as not wasting time. The main aim for these codes are not to waste any time in description as to what is the emergency. So that's why this coding system has been started, and it is standardized on all over the same codes for all the hospitals. Like code blue is the cardiopulmonary resuscitation in adults. Similarly, code white is CPR for pediatric age group. If it is red, that means there is a fire, smoke. Similarly, if it's pink, like for example, I am just quoting, it's pink, it's an infant abduction in the hospital premises. If it's purple, it's child abduction, pediatric age group. Then orange is denoted for some hazardous spillover in the hospital. Yellow is a bomb hazard. So such codes have been given for the ease of just giving an alarm system to call. I'll go ahead with exact definition of CPR. Consists of those techniques which are used to revive the circulation and breathing in patients whose respiration and circulation of blood have either suddenly or unexpectedly stopped. Again, CPR is emphasizing on two major things, that is circulation and breathing, respiration. How to apply the CPR now? There are two modules, BLS and ACLS. CPR is a part of BLS and BLS is a component of ACLS. What is BLS? BLS is basic life support and ACLS is advanced cardiovascular life support. As the name suggests, basic life support. So that is why I insisted this should be known to each and everyone, especially the healthcare providers. We should not think that we should be knowing it when we are out of the house, in the hospital premises, or this can happen, we can come across this anywhere on the roadside, in the lifts, it can be anywhere. And if we are well versed with this technique, it will help us the most, especially when it is needed for our own family members or friends. So knowing this technique is really very important because it saves the life. It involves a variety of life-saving skills and techniques like CPR, which itself is a combination of chest compression, rescue breaths and pulse checks. It also involves automatic external defibrillators and bag valve masks, that is AMPU bag. So it's mostly taken care by health professionals, but as I told you, the first responders can be anyone, either police officers, firefighters, lift persons, hospital attendants. It can be anyone who is facing such a situation, should know this technique. So what are the fundamental aspects of BLS? First is the immediate recognition of sudden cardiac arrest. Any fall or collapse in front of us need not be a cardiac arrest. We need to identify the cause, whether it is a cardiac arrest or not. Collapse can be maybe because of hypovolemia, hypotension, even hypoglycemia. maybe simple syncopal attack or a heat stroke. So every collapse is not necessarily a cardiac arrest. So first is to recognize the cardiac arrest, whether it is a cardiac arrest. Then in case it is, we go ahead with the second step of activation of emergency response system, that is the buzzer, alarm and the blue code declaration. Third comes the CPR, and then it may or may not accompany the respiration, and the cardiac system of our body, human body, is interdependent. As the heart stops functioning, the brain doesn't get oxygen and blood supply. So the respiratory center situated in the medulla oblongata of the brain will not function, and hence the respiration fails. It is interrelated. What are the causes of the cardiac arrest? For convenience, it is of ease of remembrance, classified as under these two headings of 5H and 5Ts. It can be hypoxia, like in case of exposure to smoke, hypovolemia, hydrogen ion imbalance like metabolic acidosis, hyper or hypokalemia, electrolyte imbalances, or hypothermia. And in case of tension pneumothorax like penetrating chest injuries, cardiac tamponade can occur. Toxins like digoxin, local anesthetics, or even insecticides, and it can be thromboembolism of the pulmonary or the coronary. Now, this is a very important slide coming to a quick and very prompt examination of the patient has to be done, because we just cannot forget the golden 3 or 4 minutes that we are getting. A lot of time has not got to be wasted, so a superficial look for these signs of apnea, absence of carotid or femoral pulse. We should not waste time seeing for peripheral pulses. We have to see the carotid pulse. Dilated pupils, cyanosis, patient is unconscious, and sometimes accompanied by even fits or convulsions. So a quick supervision of the patient has to be done to assess the cardiac arrest. However, in CPR, one more important thing is when to give the CPR, how fast, how much to apply the pressure, when not to give the CPR, that is contraindication I'm coming to, and when to stop the CPR. These are few very important things we have to take care. So the contraindications of CPR is when the patient has a valid DNAR order, that is, do not administer resuscitation order, or the patient has irreversible death like rigor mortis is seen, no point wasting time. Vital functions have deteriorated despite maximum therapy. This is in case of mass casualties. We should not waste time on one patient if we are not seeing. Or in case of child of confirmed gestation, less than neonate of confirmed gestation, less than 23 weeks, or birth weight of less than 400 grams, or showing signs of NLP. So this is the chain of survival in the basic life support. First is again early recognition and calling for help. Second is early CPR. Third is early defibrillation. And then comes the post-resuscitation care, which includes setting up of IV line and drugs. Coming to CPR. Earlier it used to be, all our resuscitations we have studied as it used to be ABC in our times. Airway, breathing and circulation. However, the American Heart Association has reframed it now as laying more stress on the compression than air. As we see, the heart stops, so the blood supply to all the vital organs are stopped. This is again a slide where this will be better understood in a video presentation that I will be. So, position the patient on his back on a flat, firm surface. The surface should be flat and firm. Kneel along one side of the patient's chest. That is to come at the level of the chest. The purpose of this is to, the resuscitation theatre should be at the level of the patient's chest. Now we locate the lower part of the sternum. We place one hand on the midline, lowermost part of the sternum. That is a line middle seen from the nipples of the patient at the center. Place the other hand over the first hand, or heels of the first hand, and interlock the fingers. Then using the heel of the hands, we exert pressure on the sternum, and pressure instead can create rib fracture if excessive force is applied. You have to be very careful, or they can even be injury to the spleen and the liver. That, like we see in this figure, at the center of the chest, base of sternum, fingers interlocked with the heel of the hand. To provide effective chest compressions, we need to push hard and push fast at a rate of around 100 to 120 compressions per minute, with at least 2 to 2.5 inches depth. This is very important because many a times all the things are done but not in an effective way. Again, the respirator should allow complete recoil of the chest after each compression, to allow the heart to fill completely. So between successive compressions, we should also allow the heart to recoil of the heart should occur. Otherwise, it's of no use. And the compression ventilation ratio always is 30:2 recommended. In this, I would like to emphasize if the rescuer is alone, he or she will take care of both the things, 30 compressions accompanied by 2 breaths. However, if there is a team and there is another person, the rescuer should concentrate on the compressions, then the rate should be 100 to 120 compressions per minute, and the person on the respiratory side will be keep on giving breaths intermittently after every 30 compressions. So the aim is to give around 100 to 120 compressions in 1 minute and 8 to 10 breaths should be delivered. It is only after this 5 cycle, that is 1 cycle is 30:2, 30 compressions and 2 breaths. Only after 5 such cycles, that is approximately 2 minutes time, should the switchover take place. Because chest compression is tiring, it is exhausting. So after 5 cycles, it is recommended that they switch over, they swap their roles. First thing after this is to assess the carotid pulse. If not seen, if still not palpable, resume the CPR within 7 seconds. Again reassess the pulse intermittently, and if we get the carotid pulse, stop CPR, stop the compressions, check for respiration then. Go ahead to see the breathing of the patient. If there is no breathing, we have to start with artificial breathing and keep on assessing the vital signs. This was about the compression. Coming to the second part, that is the airway. The airway can be obstructed with any foreign matter. If there is obvious foreign matter, then we should go ahead and removing that. Say the mouth, slightly open the mouth and see, there can be a food particle or a teeth, broken tooth or large mucus plug or blood plug. Then only, many times by handling this, the foreign matter, we tend to push the foreign matter further inside and obstructing the airway. So only when it is very obvious, we should indulge in removing it. Most common cause of airway obstruction is the tongue fall. So in this, as seen in the figure, we should go ahead with the head tilt and chin lift maneuver. So as to the tongue fall gets corrected in this and the airway gets cleared. Most of the cases, this is the reason. However, in cervical spine injuries or roadside accidents where we are not sure of the head and neck traumas, we should not give a head tilt, chin lift maneuver. Then in that case, we go with the jaw thrust. I will be showing this over the dummy, all these maneuvers. Hyperextend the head and neck of the patient as I told you, and when the breathing is restored, then we can place a oropharyngeal Goodell's airway so that again repeated tongue fall doesn't occur, and in case of any fits or seizures, the tongue bite doesn't occur. So if the breathing is not restored, then we start with the artificial ventilation. And to initiate the breathing, this is the posture. Pinch the patient's nostrils closed with the index finger and the thumb, and the hands near the patient's face, ensuring airtight seal. Then we take a deep breath, place widely open mouth over the patient's mouth and blow forcefully enough to make the patient's chest rise. But we should also check for the rise of the patient's chest. So we should turn our face and have a look at the patient's chest also, so as to ensure that it is expanding. Adequate ventilation is taking place. So we have to tilt our head to see those. The methods of artificial breathing can be mouth to mouth, as we have seen in this, mouth to barrier device also in case of some specified infections, mouth to nose or mouth to stoma ventilation in case of tracheostomy done. These are the devices of artificial ventilation. Ambu bag, the advantage in this is the oxygen reservoir and the non-rebreathing outlet wall. Then there are advanced airway techniques of putting, again I told you about Goodell's airway, as we are seeing in this, or LMA insertion to prevent tongue fall, and endotracheal tube. The aim is to deliver approximately 8 to 10 breaths per minute. After this, defibrillation may or may not be needed in case of BLS, but it is a part of the basic life support. Earlier it used to be handled only by health professionals, doctors only it was, but nowadays it is automatic. Automated devices have come which gives its own instructions, it's all recorded. So these are started being handled by nursing staff as well as other paramedic staff also. A defibrillator basically delivers a dose of electric current to the heart. So we turn on the machine, bare the chest and dry it off. Place one pad of the patient's upper right chest above the nipple and the other pad on the patient's lower left ribs below the armpit as seen in this figure. The art knowledge has to be in the placing of the electrodes only basically. Once we have placed the electrodes and connected, switched it on, it should be charged and put in the monophasic or biphasic mode which we have chosen. Rest instructions are given. The defibrillators that we have in the hospital premises also all are automated. So rest instructions are given by the defibrillator. That is, we have to stand clear of the patient. If the AED says shock advice charging, we need to shout and clear everyone away from the patient. Nobody should be touching the patient. Push the shock button, it gives the current in 360 joules in the monophasic, and if no shock is advised, of course CPR should be started again along with respiration, 30:2, same. And the EED will reanalyze on its own after every 2 minutes. If necessary, it will give a shock. So that is why this is inculcated in the BLS, because it has become automated nowadays. When to give a shock? In case of abnormal heart rhythms, any arrhythmia like ventricular fibrillation or ventricular tachycardia, we will see signs of dizziness, shortness of breath, lightheadedness. We feel as though the heart is racing somewhere, and chest pain. So these are the common indications where we need to use a defib, and this is kind of ECG graph seen. Now, as I told you earlier, we should also be knowing when to stop the CPR. This is also very important. So any one of these signs arise, like we get a satisfactory pulse, palpable pulse, constriction of pupils, the blood pressure is could be taken, there is improvement in the color of the skin, respiratory movements are taking place rhythmically, or the patient has been declared dead by the doctor. In that case, these are the reasons why we stop the CPR. Coming to after BLS, coming to ACLS. BLS is a component of ACLS. And ACLS, all the steps of BLS, in addition to that is the setting up of IV line, which is very crucial for giving IV fluids and drugs. And since it is assessing the heart rhythm, it is supposed to be handled by professionals or nursing staff assisting them. The chain of survival again consists of the initial 5 steps of that of BLS and the intravenous administration of medications which come in the ACLS. In ACLS, we are basically concerned with the drugs. The emergency drugs, we all know about it and have it in our emergency, are epinephrine, atropine, amiodarone, lignocaine. These are all the emergency drugs. Proper dosage and administration routes should be displayed in the casualty and emergencies everywhere. This was about ACLS. This is a very important topic and touching about nurses' responsibility, which include nursing staff as well as the hospital attendants, because they can be the first responders to such situation till the doctor arrives. So that is why the emphasis is on them. First responsibility again comes in preliminary assessment of the patient, whether it is a cardiac arrest. In case of that, calling for help, buzzer, alarms, code blue, those things that I've spoken, and calling for help. The biggest thing is that. Equipments, in case the doctor has arrived, the nursing staff has the responsibility of getting the equipments ready. Usually all the equipments that I am going to enumerate are always there in the hospital, casualties, emergency rooms, they are there. But in such crucial times, the art is in, for the nurses and the attendants is to give the doctors exactly in time the instrument needed, the equipment needed. That is the art. So they should be kept in a proper order. I am just enlisting the equipments that should be present, and most of them are brought here for others to have a look also. Oxygen administration sets, IV sets, ambu bag and masks, endotracheal tubes of different sizes, oropharyngeal and nasal airways, laryngoscopes of different sizes, tracheostomy sets, suction apparatus, cardiac monitors and defibrillators, mechanical respiratory sets, then emergency drugs which I have enumerated, clean wrap pieces, syringes, needles, BP apparatus, light sources. Most of it we all have. It should be kept in proper order and should be in right condition, like the battery charge of light sources and of the defibrillators. These are the prerequisites to be handled. Coming to preparation of the patient and the environment. In case we are a team and the doctors have reached taking care of the resuscitation, and there are lots of nursing staff and other attendants, Then they can take care of the relatives of the patient, take them aside, explain the procedure. Otherwise, no time should be lost in handling the relatives. Then patient should be shifted, of course, on a hard surface, hardboard, if they can be shifted. Otherwise, on the bed, there is a system of putting the plants below the patient. Because hard surface, firm and hard surface is needed. We have to remove all the nursing staff to take care of removing the clothing of the patient. The chest has to be exposed right from the neck up till the chest. The clothing have to be removed. Now comes after the BLS and ACLS is the aftercare of the patient. It's very important that for the initial 48 to 72 hours, there is a skilled person monitoring the patient for the vital signs. For that we need to shift him to the ICU for close observation. There, oxygen support has to be given because for a certain period of time the respiratory system has been compromised. So this should be provided. Checking once again for the head and jaw position so that there is no tongue fall again. And monitoring the respiratory rate, rhythm and depth. This is very necessary. Also seeing for the color of the skin and other signs of circulation and respiration again are seen by watching at the contraction of the pupils, color of the skin, quality of pulse, free movements of the chest wall, blood pressure is to be noted, any other struggling movements by the patient, temperature of the patient, watching for convulsions they may arise in case of brain damage or metabolic acidosis. Then if ET tube is not there, we insert the endotracheal tube, insertion of Foley's catheter to maintain the urine output, IV infusion in case of IV fluids and drugs to be administered, and blood ABJ, blood gas analysis is to be done in case of metabolic acidosis. Watching for some complications which may occur like hyperextension of the head may cause neck or cervical spine injury, fracture of ribs while giving compressions, hemopericardial pneumothorax, gastric distension with air. Recording all these things again is the duty of the nurses. A proper record of all these things has to be kept. So I would like to conclude my presentation of CPR, which is a component of BCL and ACLS. It's a very important life-saving step. I will just summarize it. Again, immediate recognition and activation of the emergency response system. Early CPR, rapid defibrillation may or may not be needed. Hospitalization, post-care. Because when a patient suddenly collapses, whoever is nearby should activate the emergency system and begin the chest compressions, regardless of training. Chest compression and breathing resuscitation does not need any equipment. One should not wait for any equipment. Chest compression should be delivered by pushing hard and pushing fast in the center of the chest. The rescuer should allow complete chest recoil after each successive compression and minimize interruptions in the chest compression. Again emphasizing on swapping the roles only after 5 cycles are over. That is 2 minutes of oxygen and breathing has gone. Now I would like to present a video. By this a better understanding will be done.
Of every day, delivering blood and oxygen to every cell in our body. But when sudden cardiac arrest strikes, our heart suddenly and unexpectedly stops beating effectively and blood flow stops. Without any intervention, the brain, vital organs, and our heart will begin to die. Beginning CPR is the person's only chance of survival. Brain damage will start to set in within 4 minutes, and after 10 minutes, brain damage becomes irreversible. The power to save a life is truly in your hands. Performing CPR accomplishes 2 critical things. 1, compressions move oxygenated blood to the brain to keep the brain alive. And 2, compressions keep blood and oxygen moving to the heart muscle itself so that it has the best chance of resuming a normal electrical rhythm after a shock is delivered. As you begin compressions, you are creating an artificial pump and doing the work of the heart manually. With each good, effective compression, you are building up pressure in the system, which will move blood around the heart and up to the brain. It does take time to get the blood moving with CPR, so it is very important to push hard and push fast to build the pressure up, which keeps blood going to the brain. Pushing down at least 2 inches allows for the heart to be squeezed and blood to move out. Pushing at a rate of 100 to 120 compressions per minute is necessary to keep blood pumping. Let's see what happens when we take our hands off the chest. Blood stops moving to the brain. It is for this reason that if you are taking your hands off the chest to deliver breaths or switching roles, it is critical to minimize time off the chest. Watch what happens when we don't push deep enough. Blood does not reach the brain. The same is true if we do not push fast enough. Watch what happens when we push too fast. The heart does not have time to refill with blood. Therefore, not enough blood gets pumped out. Watch what happens when we don't allow the body to decompress and allow the chest to fully recoil. The heart does not have a chance to refill with blood. Therefore, no blood gets pumped out. So remember, the key purpose of delivering compressions is to keep oxygenated blood moving within the heart and up to the brain to keep the brain alive. We need to push hard and push fast in the center of the chest. If ribs break, that's okay. What's not okay is allowing the brain to die from a lack of oxygen. So remember, you are their only hope. Do the best you can, and don't give up until medical help arrives or an AED is present. You can do it.